Well, good evening, everybody. This is Frank Bloksberg. I am Chief Instructor of Aikido'Ka in Grass Valley, California, and I have the distinct pleasure and honor of having a conversation this evening with Linda Holiday Sensei, who is the author of the new book being released today. It's entitled Journey to the Heart of Aikido, the teachings of Motomichi Anno Sensei. And I've just finished the book today, and I want to tell you, this is an incredibly important book. We really deeply thank you, Linda Sensei, for writing this book. At this moment, even though I've been training for a long, long time, I have a much better understanding of O-Sensei's words than ever before, much better. This book is a deeply profound book, and I'm not just saying that to say it to make anybody happy. This is a deeply profound book and really a must for every Aikido student, particularly serious students. So we all owe you, Sensei, a real debt of gratitude for writing this incredible book. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you so much for saying that.
It's true.
Gratitude really is the name of this phenomenon, because I wrote the book out of a sense of gratitude to my teachers and all of the gifts that I've been fortunate enough to be given in Aikido. Absolutely, the sense of gratitude is what propelled me through all these long years of working on the book.
So a little bit of my history, just very, very quickly. I started training in Aikido in Southern California in the early 1970s, like 1972. Trained for several years, then took off something like 20 years. And then when my young son wanted to start training Aikido, I started again. And so I've been training for a long, long time. And I'm Chief Instructor of Aikido in Grass Valley. Linda Holiday Sensei, on the other hand, will tell us a little bit about her earliest time in Aikido.
I started Aikido in 1970, the fall of 1970, when I was a first-year student at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And at that time, there were very few Aikido dojos anywhere in the United States, and there were about 4 or 5 in Northern California just starting. So I was lucky to kind of stumble into an Aikido class at UC Santa Cruz at that time in 1970 with Robert Frazier Sensei, who was my first teacher, and Frank Duran Sensei, who was also my first teacher. They co-taught together.
Wow.
Frazier Sensei and Duran Sensei.
Lucky you.
Yes, absolutely. And at that time, Aikido was pretty much unknown, and it was just very exciting. I mean, it's still exciting to do Aikido, but at the time there was that whole sense of it being a new art and people being pioneers, and we're almost like a secret, what we were doing. It was very exciting. And
that's what it felt like. That's what it felt like when I started. There was only one Aikido dojo in the San Fernando Valley, and it was in a temple. And basically nobody knew about it. I had to search like crazy to find it.
Yeah. So I trained there at UCSC for a few years. This is all detailed in the book, or briefly detailed in the book, and then I became just so interested in Aikido that I actually took a leave of absence from the university and went off to Japan, and I didn't get back to studying at the university until 1978, I think. So the 70s was a time of great adventure and very intensive Aikido training for me in Japan, and then also back in this country when I was here. Now I've just been involved, completely in Aikido all this time since I was 18, and now I'm 61, and I have been teaching in Santa Cruz, the very place I started training in Aikido. Now I teach in Santa Cruz and have been for over 30 years at Aikido of Santa Cruz, which is a nonprofit organization, educational organization in Santa Cruz, and a large and lively dojo here in Santa Cruz. So I'm the chief instructor and the executive director, and have been for several decades.
That's wonderful. It's a beautiful dojo. Absolutely amazing building that you have there that you turned into a really beautiful place to train and to hang out.
It's our dream come true dojo. It took a lot of years of everyone's effort to get to the place where we could actually buy a building and then remodel it and make it into our something that really expresses our dreams and hopes for Aikido.
It's a beautiful place. If any of you ever get the chance to go ahead and train there, boy, oh boy, take the opportunity. It is really, really beautiful. In the book, it says that you worked on the book for something like 14 years. That's incredible. The amount of dedication is just astonishing.
Thank you. It has been a long time, and I've gone through different phases in working on the book. I committed myself to doing the book in 1999, the first year that Anno Sensei came here, that I was able to invite him here to Santa Cruz. But I didn't know, I knew I had to make a book, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know what structure the book would take. So I just started recording Anno Sensei and collecting material for years. And then I started to translate the material without really knowing exactly what I was going to do with it. I just literally felt the call and the sense of service to do it.
You went to Japan as a young woman to train in Aikido, and women in martial arts in Japan, Aikido or otherwise, were not particularly heard of, particularly American women. Could you tell us a little bit about the experience, what that was like?
Being a woman there?
A young woman doing martial arts in
martial arts in Japan. Well, yes, it is an experience of being unusual. can't exactly pass.
No.
It was actually quite interesting because once I was living in Shingu, and my two constant companions were Jack Wada and Dick Ravour. We were all three of us from Santa Cruz, and we're having this very fantastic and special opportunity to study in Shingu with Hikitsuchi Sensei, the chief instructor at the time, and Anno Sensei and the other teachers there. So it was the three of us. For a certain amount of time, it was just the three of us. And so I just stood out everywhere, as a Caucasian, as a woman. I had this long blonde hair, and people would just stare at me wherever I went. And sometimes I would be, walking down the street with Jack Wada, who of course just looked Japanese. But he was a gaijin, a foreigner like me, but just could pass, very easily in the population there. And sometimes people would come up to, people would try to talk to us, and at that time, I could understand the best Japanese, and Jack could speak it better than I. So people would speak to Jack, and then he would look at me, and I would translate for him, and then he would speak back to them. So it was very funny.
Do you think you got different treatment on the mat than just anybody else?
Well, I mean, really the answer to that is yes. We all of us got special. I don't know what special treatment really means. I mean, no one could forget that we were foreigners. But a lot of times the special treatment was very pleasant. People appreciated us being there. And so I don't know. I mean, I think after a while we were accepted. We kind of earned our place in the dojo as sincere Aikido students, and people appreciated us being there. We were there every class, and that was greatly appreciated. So yeah, we got special treatment in that way. People appreciated our being there.
No one.
What you meant?
You didn't get the sense that anyone was going to put you to task for being different or being a woman where a woman didn't belong or anything like that. It felt like you were actually in a place of doing Aikido.
Well, I think there largely that was the case, and that was just a beautiful experience to be kind of in the heart of the dojo there, and to be truly training and having deep training experiences with people who were so experienced, and had studied with O-Sensei and so on. So that was a beautiful, deep experience of actually being accepted. I can't say that there weren't, times when either in Shingu or often it was, maybe if I traveled someplace else to train, people didn't know me that well. There were times when I felt people were puzzled, why was I there? And I got the sense that since there were no other women training, that maybe it had something to do with me being a woman or being a foreigner. But I just tried to ignore all that and just train with people sincerely.
First times training with Anno Sensei or Hikitsuchi Sensei or whomever?
Yes. Well, the first time I trained with Hikitsuchi Sensei, who is maybe the people listening know, he was a very close student of O-Sensei, but he lived down in the Kumano area of Japan, which is quite remote from Tokyo. It took a long time to get down there, and it is the birthplace of O-Sensei, so O-Sensei would come back to his homeland, frequently. So the people who lived in Kumano studied with O-Sensei, periodically, but not all the time because he wasn't there all the time. But anyway, Hikitsuchi Sensei was a very, very close and devoted student of O-Sensei, and he had a certain, air about him, and very, very powerful and sharp. And so I remember the first class that I had with him, and it was when Mary Heine Sensei had taken me and Dick Revore down to Shingu for the first time. And I felt kind of overwhelmed, to be in this very traditional wooden dojo that O-Sensei had taught in, and here was Hikitsuchi Sensei right there, who had studied with O-Sensei, and so he demonstrated a technique, and he lectured for a while, and then he stopped, and everyone paired up, and I was standing there, and he looked at me, and he put out his hand, and it looked like kind of like a stop sign, or like he was shooing me away. So I started backing up, just thinking, what's going on here? I started backing up, and then he kept waving, shooing me away with his hand, and I did not realize that is the Japanese gesture for come here. I was backing up, and he kept saying with his hands, come here, and it took a while to figure out what was going on. And then he just very patiently, practiced with me and taught me some things without, of course, using language because I didn't speak Japanese at the time. But it was just so intense and very exciting, and often the experience of not knowing what to do, not quite getting the cues, and wanting so much to understand what was going on because I could tell it was something very tremendous, and every other word was O-Sensei. And this was just 4 years after O-Sensei died.
It must have been an amazing experience to be training with with O-Sensei's close students and not be able to understand a word they were saying to you at first, and trying to learn what they were trying to communicate. It would all have to be physical. What an experience.
I was very motivated. It just felt like it was just the most amazing opportunity. And so I actually studied Japanese, on my own very hard, just to try to get so I could understand what they were saying, because they were saying all these wonderful things. Not only Hikitsuchi Sensei, but Anno Sensei and the other teachers in Shingu. They were just all very, very generous and inspiring, and each in their own way.
It sounds wonderful.
And the first, one of the first classes I had with Anno Sensei, I described in the book, was like a private lesson that he did for Jack and Dick and myself in Shingu during the day. And he just came in, and he didn't even put on his hakama. He wore a white belt and just trained with us. And it was so amazing just to feel this hands-on experience of his Aikido. It felt, I don't know, like something melting. It did not feel at all harsh. It felt very kind of this beautiful flow, and like I was suddenly a part of something bigger than myself. Wow.
And I'll bet it felt that way basically all the time you trained with him.
It did. I mean, not that it was not that it was easy all the time. I mean, training is hard. It was very challenging. It was really grueling and vigorous, and that was a large part of the experience of training in Shingu. It was hard training, but it was always sort of imbued with this sense of spiritual purpose. And then beautiful moments of the sort of complete blending that we all like to aim at, but we can't always experience And then sometimes when we're training with someone of deeper experience, we can experience that level of Aikido, even though we can't generate it ourselves. So that was my, I just loved that. I feel so grateful for all those opportunities, all those experiences.
Well, I'm feeling jealous. It sounds absolutely spectacular. You know, my first experience with Anno Sensei, the thing that just stunned me was his, well, in the book you say startling humility. And it was startling. He's so truly humble. It's not an act.
Well, you feel it with him.
You do.
I mean, like you do with you know what that feels like with people, you know, when you really feel that someone is sincere, or you feel that they're authentic, or you feel that they are humble, they're just, you know, genuine, they don't have any ego on display or agenda, and it's such a beautiful, kind of refreshing, inspiring feeling. And Anno Sensei has that feeling. He gives that feeling, you know, a lot. And I've known him now for, you know, exactly 40 years, and he's real. You know, I know him pretty well, and that really is who he is. He's humble, and he's inspired. He's kind of he's always thinking really beyond himself.
Often when teachers teach, they say, well, you know, I've learned something and I want to teach this to you. I never get the sense that he wants to teach anything. He's sharing. And,
yeah.
And, you know, here's something that I've been working on for the last 50 years, and I think it's wonderful, and I'd like to share it with you, and we can work on this together. And,
yes.
And that's just kind of, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's something to strive for, that he doesn't give the sense that he knows this stuff. He's working on it. He's working on it with us. And it's on the path.
Yes, and with a teacher like that, it really helps you, you know, kind of keep your head on straight, because, you know, if I ever started to think that, like, I've got it, all I have to think about is, which I don't actually,
right.
But all I have to do is think about Anno Sensei, and you know, things become clear. It's like, no, you know, this is practice. It's a deepening practice. It's not something that you know, that you get and then you, like, sell to other people or something.
Right. Right. It's a practice. And he's extremely skilled. He's astonishingly skilled, but that's not what he's about. He's sharing this stuff, and obviously he's worked on having extraordinary skills. And in the book he talks about train to really get good, really train diligently. Train hard.
Techniques are important, and training hard is important. Yeah, I love that, of the way he really values all aspects of the practice. You know, it's not like the fact that he emphasizes, that he conveys the spiritual side of practice does not limit his involvement in the physical practice at all. It just inspires it.
One of the things that you talk about in the book is that O-Sensei said that the purpose of Aikido is to create sincere people.
Mm-hmm.
And it really seems as though Anno Sensei has taken that to heart for real. Could you expand on that concept a little bit?
Well, you know, O-Sensei, the founder of Aikido, I've, you know, heard him quoted as saying that, you know, well, people don't understand what Budo is, you know, what the martial way is. You know, that there's these fundamental misunderstandings when someone does come into the martial way and think that it's just about acquiring techniques or acquiring personal power. I think that it's not just Aikido. I mean, it's, you know, probably all the martial arts at their core actually are about this development of sincerity and truth. So I think that, you know, O-Sensei often spoke about Budo. He didn't always say Aikido. He said Budo. He's talking about the essence of the martial way and the martial practice, you know, kind of at its best. Really is about how we develop as people and how we live our lives, you know, and that the techniques and the practice of Budo is points in that direction. So the development of a sincerity, I think, is not just something that O-Sensei, you know, he didn't invent that or anything. That's something that he valued in the long tradition of the martial arts. And then it could be that, you know, and Anno Sensei tends to feel that that O-Sensei's maybe special contribution was more in the area of love. And that is even more paradoxical, isn't it?
Indeed.
With the martial practice, how can that be? How can that develop love?
How can you hit somebody in the head hard in a loving way? Right. But well, so what about it's about kokoro. It's about heart.
Kokoro, heart. Yes.
And true heart.
Right. And again, that's something that O-Sensei emphasized. Aikido is a matter of heart and the development of the spirit.
Well, what does that mean when we say heart, or when O-Sensei says heart or true heart? What is he getting at there?
First of all, I can quote O-Sensei and I can speculate about it, but please note that I am not speaking for O-Sensei.
Indeed. Understood.
I can't say, exactly what he was getting at there.
Well, I can rephrase and say, well, Anno Sensei talks about kokoro, about heart and true heart, and his view of where O-Sensei was coming from. So if you could share some of that.
Anno Sensei says that it implies that we all kind of share the same heart underneath it all, that there's sort of a common heart, a common connection and place in the world, and the way that we are as human beings, that we are, really part of nature and part of the universe. That is a kind of a beautiful, shining existence, and which is not about fighting with each other or competing with each other or our egos getting in the way and that sort of thing. So there's a sense with this, like for instance, the concept of misogi or purification in Aikido, that what we're doing through our practice is trying to shed those extras, those personal ego strivings or those fears or aggressive feelings or whatever, to get back to something that is true and sincere in each of us, that we then share, that you might call a loving heart and a sense of connection and sincerity. So, and then the practice of Aikido has that aspect, and certainly the founder of Aikido emphasized that too, that the practice of Aikido itself, especially as we do it sincerely, is a practice of purification that we experience. I think people training in Aikido on all sorts of levels, we have a sense after you've gone through a class or whatever, you've had a vigorous practice, you feel like you've gotten down to someplace essential in yourself, and that it's a better place than where you started at the beginning of class.
Right. Well, I definitely know that feeling. You mentioned Purification Misogyny. You talk about in the book some of your early experiences with Misogyny and the hardships involved with Shugyo. Could you tell us a little bit about preparing for, I think it's the new year, going into the river, and how cold that was and what you did to get yourself ready?
I will. But I just want to say something else before then.
Yes, absolutely.
It's in response to what we've been talking about, but it's also something I think that's important to say about the book itself, and that is that it's kind of paradoxical, but kind of a great paradox in the book, that the title is Journey to the Heart of Aikido, and the subtitle is The Teachings of Motomichi, Anno Sensei. So
Indeed.
And his pictures on the cover, and he's really quoted, a lot of the book is his translated teachings. But, paradoxically, it's not about him. It really is, so we've been talking about what a wonderful teacher he is and how inspiring he is and how humble he is and all these things, which are true. But it's not, the book is about Aikido, and it's about the fundamental teachings of Aikido. And so I just want to make it really clear that it's not a book that is sort of asking everyone to become a student of Anno Sensei. I wrote the book kind of utilizing, in gratitude for, and also utilizing Anno Sensei's teachings, because he is a wonderful conveyor of these teachings of Aikido. But he would be terribly mortified if this were some sort of ploy to make Anno Sensei, the great Aikido teacher of the world. He doesn't feel that way, and that's not the purpose of the book. So when we're talking about Anno Sensei, I just want to make that clear, that it's not about, and the essence is not really about him, although I have a deep gratitude for him, and I think he is a rare and wonderful teacher. You know, that there are many, many wonderful teachers of Aikido, and Anno Sensei himself emphasizes that. He said, train, 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 and learn from all the wonderful Aikido teachers that there are, and then keep thinking about the teachings of O-Sensei as you train.
Well, thank you for making that clear. And you know, as I read the book, I didn't have the sense that this book was about, oh, become a disciple of Anno Sensei. What I got was Anno Sensei is a particularly good communicator of some very challenging concepts. And here, listen to these things and dwell on them a lot, and then go forth and do good things. And that's what makes the book so important, because it's not about him, it's not about you, and it's not about me, the reader.
Good. I'm glad that comes across.
It really, really does, and I'm really glad that you made that point. It's important when you know, we're talking about some of these things, like you said, well, I can't speak for O-Sensei, which is absolutely true. And so we're just using like this rhetorical device of, well, you guys are the communicators, so this is what you said. But I agree with you. It's super important to understand that these are the concepts of Aikido, or or O-Sensei, I would think would agree with the idea that these aren't even the concepts of Aikido. It's beyond that. This is one human family.
That's right, and that there are universal truths.
Right.
And that Aikido, the path of Aikido and the practice of Aikido is one way, one profound way of learning and realizing and coming into alignment with those universal truths. Yeah, absolutely. It's bigger than Aikido. And similarly, I also just want to say that I had an interesting challenge, which I thought about for years, and hopefully was successful. In the book, I wanted to honor O-Sensei's connection with the Kumano area, you know, where I trained and the teachers there and so on, without making it an advertisement for Kumano. You know, it's not about the Kumano Juku Dojo. It's not about some particular lineage of Aikido being better than another. In fact, it's very important, in my opinion, that we see all the different lineages of Aikido as a whole, you know, as something that can be braided together in a very constructive way. But at the same time, you know, I had my particular experience of training in the Kumano area where O-Sensei was from, and I felt that that was a part of Aikido history that needed to be told, that I was able to express from my personal experience and the connection with people there. So there is an honoring of Kumano, but it's not a sectarian book. It's a book for everyone in Aikido, and anyone outside of Aikido who's interested in it as well.
And you succeeded. I didn't get any sort of a sectarian or provincial type of feeling from the book. In fact, as I read the book, I started thinking, ooh, I want to go visit Kumano. But I didn't have the sense that I had to go train at that particular dojo. But I got a strong sense of the importance of the history of the region to Aikido and just to Japan in particular. And it sounds so beautiful that I want to go.
It's stunningly beautiful. When I go back every year, just about every year, sometimes twice a year, to visit, and I take little groups of people with me sometimes, and I'm just stunned every time at the beauty of the area, the mountains and the waterfalls and the rivers and the rice paddies and all of that. It's quite stunningly beautiful.
And as this slideshow goes by, I was going to say, that as the slideshow goes by, you'll see sometimes, I think there are one or two pictures of the Kumano region and even the waterfall. Well, there's a waterfall right there. But I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying I want to what?
Oh, no, I remember you were asking me to tell a little bit about the story of my this is recounted in the book. I did not, have a concept of Misogi or an appreciation for Misogi before I went to Japan and trained in the Kumano area. I had no sense that immersing oneself in the cold waters in the winter was anything good to do. And I think that it is kind of counterintuitive.
But for a moment, if I could interrupt you, if you would define for us Misogi so we're all clear.
Well, misogi means purification, and it implies a practice of purification, or it's an old word in Japanese, and it comes out of Shinto, you could say, or you could say that it just is an old word in Japanese, and Shinto also came out of, the prehistory in Japan, and it means purification, and it often involves kind of rituals of purification, and often involving cold water. So going into cold water or rivers or that sort of thing is a classic way of doing misogi practice. But it's the concept is one of, kind of as I mentioned before, as shedding what is non-essential and going back to your essential, your original nature, which is very positive. And so, when you're dealing with this kind of shocking experience of going in the cold water, you have a choice, I guess, of how to deal with it. You can just let it throw you completely off your center, or you can develop a deeper center. You can find your center, and that's, of course, the goal of the misogi practice. There I was in Shingu my first year, and I'd just been training really hard since, I think I'd been in Shingu since April, training like constantly. And they'd gone through the seasons, and then it was getting pretty cold. It was December, and Anno Sensei announced to me and probably some other people that there was going to be a misogi, that they did it every year in the Kumano River. The whole dojo would go in the cold waters of the Kumano River not the first of the year, actually did it on January 2nd as a New Year's purification. And I was just shocked at the thought. It had never even occurred to me that someone would do that. And I must have looked shocked, and Anno Sensei said, and I believed him at the time, he said, "I'm worried about it too." Looking back on it, I think, oh, what a sweet thing for him to say. He was just putting himself right next to me in that way, metaphorically speaking. He said, "I'm worried about it too. I don't know how this is going to go. So I think we'd better get ready. Let's prepare."
Okay.
And so I thought, oh, wow, we'll do this together. And it was such an honor, I thought, to prepare with Anno Sensei, this teacher in Shingu. And then he said, so let's, every night you're going to pour 10 buckets of the coldest water you can get over your head after the bath. And
after a nice hot bath.
Yeah, after the hot bath, which was the only way I was getting warm, because everything was cold and the houses were not heated and that sort of thing. It's a poor area of Japan. So I just thought, well, I already agreed, so I thought I'd try it. And that night I went to, after training and everything, I went back to where I was staying, which was kind of a dreary little dormitory with a concrete bathroom down the hall. And I finally got warm through the bath, and then I took that bucket of water and I dumped it over my head, and I just screamed. It was just so shocking and terrible.
It sounds horrible.
Because I had promised Anno Sensei, I did it 9 more times after that, and I just was screaming bloody murder, which turned out to be completely the wrong thing to do. But I didn't know that until the next morning when I went back to class, which I did every morning, and Anno Sensei was there. And then I said, hey, this is what happened. I did it, and I was just screaming my head off. And he said, what? You're supposed to keep your center, not lose your center. And he, instructed me just by his example, to find my center, with this challenge to my center of the cold water. But basically, I just learned from experience. He just led me through the experience, from afar, and I learned just through the experience of experiencing the cold water. I started to find a center that I did not know I had, and that really seemed to me to be the point of the matter. So when I eventually, 4 or so weeks later, went into the river on the 2nd of January, it was amazing how I felt I was able to keep my center in that situation and enjoy it. And
Wow.
And probably some of the people listening have gone with me now and done misogi, because I like to lead the misogi sessions now in California. We go into the ocean. Sometimes we go into Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
When I do teach the Tahoe seminar with Richard Strozzi Heckler Sensei, at the end of September, and we always go in the Lake Tahoe, and people have the same reaction I did, which is, what? You know, they think, what are we going to do? The people haven't done it before. But when they do it, and they're in the beauty of nature, and they're finding this deep center, it's amazingly inspiring.
That's wonderful. And just so people know, so those people who listen to this who don't know the California ocean water, California is nice and warm, but the ocean isn't. Especially January.
In Northern California.
It's
really,
really, yeah, it's really cold. We're talking the currents are coming from Alaska. It is cold water.
Yeah, people normally don't really go in the water or stay in there without a wetsuit. You know, you see the surfers out there, but they're all wearing wetsuits.
Right. Right. Even in Southern California.
But the wetsuits are forbidden in the Misogi.
That would be Misogi light. It would
be. I go around and I make people take off anything that looks like that.
So one of the concepts that you talk about in the book is Shinken Shobu, fighting with a live blade, and how that is related to, you know, living day-to-day life with a full commitment, full attention. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. First of all, Shinken Shobu, which is a wonderful expression and well known in Japanese, outside of Aikido as well. There is no word fighting in that. Shinken means real sword, and Shobu means victory or defeat. So it can be, it can be referred to a fight with a live blade, but it actually means you're in a life and death situation. That's what that means.
Right.
And so the kind of full concentration that you would bring to a life and death situation that involved a real sword is the kind of focus that we need to bring to our training and also to, living our lives, so we don't end up not having lived our lives, right?
Yeah. So this is
about being fully present, vividly present.
Right. Right. So this is one of the real benefits then of training, if you practice with that life and death attitude, even though it's not a life and death situation, because nobody's going to train like that, hopefully. You can then take those lessons out of the dojo. You know what? One of the experiences that I had along these lines that really changed my training and my life was years ago. I found, when I came back to training, I found that having a bokken pointed at me absolutely terrified me. It wasn't my first training, but when I came back, it scared me like you wouldn't believe. And I guess that's perfectly rational, because I didn't want to get hit upside the head with this wooden thing. Yeah. So one of the senior students of the dojo came to the dojo with me one day, and we just did a session where he was far, far from me with the bokken, and for hours we just got closer and closer and closer until hours. We just kept at it until he was swinging full speed at my head, and I was sliding out of the way. I wasn't terrified anymore. In fact, I was able to welcome it. And that just changed things for me, and I'm deeply grateful.
Changed things on the mat, off the mat, right?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was a big deal. Stephen Hine is the wonderful man who did that for me. Here's a quote from the book. If one person after another comes to understand the heart of gratitude and the truth of interdependence, humanity will be able to live in peace. That was O-Sensei's teaching, says Anno Sensei. And I guess this is going back a little bit to what we were talking about before, but that sure doesn't sound like a description of a martial art.
How does that relate to Aikido practice?
Yeah.
Well, that is the big question. That's our big challenge in how to make these truths and teachings really live and be connected to our practice on the mat. And I think that the practice of Aikido actually is dependent, or is full of embedded teachings on the power of harmony and the power of cooperation and the alignment of forces, right? From the very beginning, you do Tai no Henko, you do a blending practice, or you step off the line and you align yourself with a strike rather than having it intersect you in the head. And you see how things can work together very well rather than in opposition to each other, where something cancels each other out, where forces are struggling against each other. So right there is the kernel of the understanding of interdependence, of everything being connected, rather than everything, working against each other. Everything in the universe that you look at is a part of this harmonious functioning of the universe, of all the different energies and forces in the universe, the ecosystem of the universe, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And so we experience that actually in Aikido. We don't always label it as that, but that's part of hopefully the value of this book, is to bring some of these concepts into these, more into the mind, so that we can realize, oh, that is what we are experiencing on the mat when we do a successful Aikido technique, and we're using the power of harmony rather than just exerting our individual force to force somebody to do something. We are actually experiencing this embodied power of harmony. And you can say that, and then Anno Sensei says, and doesn't that give you a sense of gratitude? Doesn't it?
It does. It does. It does.
And then, go ahead.
I was going to follow up on what you were saying there about, using force against one another. That doesn't work out. We're going to blend, but then along the same idea, here's another quote then. In Aiki, through training in Aikido, use every power you possess, the strength of every part of your being, to construct a world of beauty and peace filled with the spirit of love. Aikido cultivates a heart that can do this. So instead of using your power to fight with one another, actually we use our power to cooperate.
That's right. And we discover that is powerful, that there is a greater power, that we're participating in, that isn't just about our ego agendas, or the personal, muscular force against another person. There's a sense of things blending together and working in a greater harmony that is embedded in the practice of Aikido. It's not easy, as we all know, but it is embedded in it, and it is a marvelous feeling when we get anywhere close to it. And so I think that is that's the opportunity to experience and to develop a greater sense of this holisticness of the universe and the interdependence of all of us, our lives depending on this harmonious functioning in nature. And Anno Sensei points out in the book too, in various places, that this relates to the sense of ecology and understanding that all things work together to make our planet work, and that we need to honor that fact, or we're not going to survive.
Indeed. And so continuing to practice Aikido is going to help us get a better understanding of all of these concepts, not only an intellectual understanding, but an understanding in our bodies, so that we can actually, actualize that stuff. So Aikido training, as you've said a couple of times, and I've agreed with, is not necessarily very simple. It's not easy. It should be strenuous and challenging, or else, why bother? Well, what to do, what to think when things are going difficult on the mat?
Well, there's that great place where Anno Sensei is asked in the book by someone, when it was one of my students, talking about how frustrated she gets, with things not going well on the mat, and then she thinks, well, maybe I'll take some time off, and then pretty soon she's not training.
Right,
said,
exactly.
Yes, I totally understand. It is frustrating. I get frustrated. Everybody does. I said, but what I think when I'm frustrated is I think, oh, I need to train more, rather than I should take time off because I'm frustrated. He's noticed that he thinks to himself, okay, things are not going well. I better train more. And he's training through it rather than stepping away from it. But that was a beautiful piece of advice, or it wasn't even really advice, in that characteristic Anno Sensei way. He was just talking about his own experience.
Right. And another thing that he shared, which I thought was wonderful, that was that, recognizing that things are not going well is actually a sign of progress.
Yes.
Because if we're just doing things and they're easy, then we're not learning. We're not on the edge. We're not in that place where we can make mistakes. And that's the only place where learning happens.
Yeah, the deep learning. The deep learning, that is one of the great things that we learn to appreciate in Aikido. Learn to appreciate the difficulty, appreciate the challenge. We appreciate the mistakes that we make because we know that's where we're going to learn something. It's paradoxical, but we experience it, and it's a great part of Aikido training. I just wanted to say, before I sort of squeezed at the end or whatever, that I not only wrote the book truly from a sense of gratitude and service. I didn't think, oh, I want to write a book. It wasn't like that at all.
Over 14 years.
In fact, yeah. In fact, if I had known, how long and, how much work it would be and how hard it was going to be, I would have still done it, but it would have been harder to go forward. But anyway, I not only wrote it from this motivation of gratitude, but I feel so much gratitude for the amount of support and help that I got from everyone. I mean, yes, I did slave away by myself a lot of the time. Translation is solitary work and so on. But, first of all, Anno Sensei himself, for him to have been willing to allow me to do this, to tape him and to, make use of this material and to put it into a book that featured his teachings is a tremendous gift on his part, and I just have a lifetime of gratitude, to him, and then just so many other people, helped. For instance, there's a dear friend of mine who doesn't do Aikido at all, but became fired up about what I told her about the book, and she recognized that people outside of Aikido also will have some interest, in the book because Aikido is based on universal truths.
Absolutely.
And her name's Carolyn, and she is a writer and a writing teacher and an editor. And so she just has been helping me edit the book. She's helped over the last, I would say, 3 years in a really dedicated fashion.
Wow.
And helped me keep my spirits up when things were hard to keep going, when I didn't know what I was going to do. And she helped develop the structure of the book, which I just was not at all sure how that was going to work. And she also was one of the people who encouraged me to put some of my own story in the book and to keep some of the history in there, because my original concept of the book was just the teachings of Anno Sensei, because they were so beautiful and so useful. And yet, so part one was I was really encouraged to develop the part one of the book, which is in story fashion, by other people like Carolyn and so on. I'm really glad I listened to them. And then
I really am glad you did too, because I really like the structure of the book. I really like the organization of the book, and it would not have been as good or compelling a book for me if your story wasn't in there.
I hope that's the case. Yeah, I hope that's the case. I was hoping that people would be able to kind of go along with me, on my journey to Japan, and that they would be able to relate somehow, and then that I would then be their kind of guide, through the rest of the book. So I'm glad if that works. And the other thing I want to mention is that the book has so many pictures in it. And this was a vision I had from the beginning, is that I wanted it to have a lot of pictures because I feel that I wanted the book to really speak to the heart, and I feel that photographs and calligraphy are also direct ways of speaking to the heart. And so there's a lot of photos in the book, and many people, just many people donated their photographs. And then one of my students, Bo Saunders, who's a professional photographer at Rainbow Pictures, he dedicated over the last year to helping to collect the photos. A lot of the photos are his, and he actually went to Japan with me last year to collect good quality copies of the rare photos that were in Shingu that Anno Sensei gave me permission to use. So just there's been so much help, and I really feel like the book, I have my name on it as author, but it kind of belongs to a large group of people.
I read the acknowledgments at the end of the book, and I got just how much you appreciate the effort that went into making the book from all the different people. And the photos are really nice. I love photos in books, and I'm not really sure anybody doesn't, but they really do add quite a lot. The photos and the calligraphies are really a good touch. Anybody who reads the book is going to enjoy that a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'd like to know your thoughts about where we go from here with Aikido. We're going into, what, the third and fourth generation of teachers. And, how do we, today, in the 21st century, how do we invite people to train in a spirit of cooperation? When the other arts that are really doing well financially, they're thriving because of the competition and the overt violence that they bring. How do we bring Aikido into the future and have it grow with all that going on in the background or even the foreground?
Well, I think that emphasizing the mission of Aikido is important. Emphasizing the underlying teachings and goals of Aikido is really important, that really gives Aikido its place. And at the same time, we need to train hard, and we need to, make the training compelling and vivid and effective, and, all of those things. I think that's very important, for drawing people into the practice. And I also think that making it very clear what Aikido's spirit is, and not trying to make Aikido a competitive martial art or a fighting art, meaning that's its mission. Really the mission of Aikido is, at least I hear this, clearly from the words of O-Sensei, is really the development of the spirit of peace and of unity. And it's not a fighting tool. It's very good for self-defense, but that's different than fighting. So I think we need to emphasize the particular wonderful aspects of Aikido that are its own, and that I think people will be drawn to that, because that is something that we need in this world. We do need more peace. We need more methods of developing peace, not just talking about it.
Right. And to quote you from the book, the mission of Aikido, because you said the mission of Aikido, so here's from the book. The mission of Aikido is to spread the awareness that we need to be concerned about everyone's welfare and happiness, and to spread an understanding of how people can get along with one another. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's what Aikido is for. And I think that
we need to keep a large vision. I think, to keep opening, hearts and minds. And also we need to really commit ourselves to training, because Aikido is it's an embodied art. It's a physical practice, and so it's not just something that we think about. So it's both. It's the braiding together of the physical physically based practice, and the spiritual philosophy that is so valuable in Aikido.
Yes, indeed. I've got people thanking you, by the way, in the questions. Thank you so much for this opportunity to hear in your own words what we feel like when we train with you and things like that. It's really nice. Well, if folks don't have any questions that really need to be answered, then I think I will thank Linda Holiday Sensei for sharing this time with me. I really do appreciate it. Your book is really spectacular. I'm not kidding. I find it very moving. I've been, I just got the review copy a few days back, and I went to Ashland to attend a seminar with Clyde Takaguchi Sensei, and so in the evenings and the mornings I would read the book, and I would be at the seminar during the day, and I went through a truly altered experience because Takaguchi Sensei was teaching was utterly and completely congruent with what your book was saying, and it was just lovely, absolutely wonderful. Now I've come back and I won't stop talking about it, but I think my students are ready to tell me to stop, but I won't. Because it's spectacular.
That experience of your training hard and training with this wonderful, very experienced teacher, Takaguchi Sensei, and in your own mind keeping this sort of constant awareness of O-Sensei's teachings, is like the perfect combination. And Anno Sensei would just be so happy to hear you say that.
Well, it's true. It really made a huge impact on me. And again, thank you. I understand, at least from Anno Sensei's and your perspective, what O-Sensei was saying. I've read a lot of books about O-Sensei and a lot of quotes from O-Sensei and the rest of it, but what he had to say was so cryptic. And I know that he's coming from a different era, and I know that he's coming from a different culture, and he's speaking a different language. And so I'm not sure how to interpret the words that I'm seeing in front of me. But you've helped. You've helped a lot, and I'm deeply grateful for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That is really fantastic to hear.
Yeah. Everybody go out and get it.
The point of the whole endeavor is right there. So thank you so much, and I do hope that people will get the book. And I also want to say that there is a new beautiful website that has information about the book.
Oh, really?
It was just created by one of my students, Nico Secunda, who's did a fantastic job. And the web address is journeytoaikido.com. Journey-to-Aikido, just the words strung together, .com, and it has a lot of information about the book. It has beautiful pictures, and it has, you can order the book through the website, and has the information about the book launch events, which are going to be happening in Santa Cruz on October 5th and 6th, and one more in San Francisco on October 12th, which I would just love it if people would turn out for. And Anno Sensei himself is coming for the events on October 5th and 6th, which I am very deeply grateful for, as he is 82, and it's a long trip. So he will be here that weekend. I hope everyone will consider coming and being
fantastic. If I can make it to your dojo October, what was it, 6th through 8th? Was that what it was?
October 5th and 6th in Santa
excuse
Cruz.
me. Anno Sensei will be there.
He will be there, and October 12th in San Francisco, without Anno Sensei, but I and other wonderful folks will be there to do the book launch. It would just be great if people would come to that, and you can get the information online. Also, I just want to mention that there is also a new Facebook page called Journey to the Heart of Aikido, and I would love to have you look at it.
And like it. I will go to it and I will like it.
And like it, and like it.
Yeah, and share it and the rest of that.
I'm new to Facebook. I'm new to Facebook, so I'm having a lot of fun trying to find my way around there. So thank you so much, Frank, for this opportunity. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to just all of this increased communication about Aikido and about the heart of Aikido, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
All right, thank you, everybody. Bye now. Thank you, Linda Sensei.
Bye.